You're fighting a battle you can't win. Every morning you promise yourself today will be different. Today you'll focus more, work harder, have more discipline. By evening you've broken every promise again. You've tried every productivity hack, Pomodoro, time blocking, deep work, getting things done, the 5 a.m. club, and digital detoxes. And you're still struggling, still falling behind, still feeling overwhelmed, and still hating your lack of progress. Here's what nobody tells you. The problem isn't you. The problem is that you're fighting against your brain instead of working with it. In a quiet temple in ancient Japan, there lived a monk everyone called the Master of Flow. He was 85 years old, and he could accomplish more in a single morning than men a third of his age could in a week. Every dawn, he tended his garden, transcribed ancient scrolls, counseled the villagers, and meditated for hours. He did this every single day. At 85, he didn't use special tools or modern technology. Every single task was handled with a calm, piercing focus. He never used a planner in his life, never looked at a clock, never heard of a productivity app or a notification filter. And he remained sharp, effective, and peaceful until the day he passed. How? He followed 10 ancient focus principles that had been passed down through his lineage for centuries. Principles so natural that nobody thought of them as hacks. They were just how you lived. And here's what's crazy. Modern neuroscience now proves that every single one of these principles actually works. They prevent burnout, cognitive fatigue, and chronic procrastination, but they don't work through willpower or force. They work because they align with how your mind naturally wants to process information. Today, you'll learn those exact 10 principles through the story of a young scribe who was struggling just like you are now. Exhausted, distracted, fighting his mind every day until the master taught him the temple secrets that changed everything. Before we begin, comment below. How many productivity systems have you tried that didn't work? Write the number honestly, because you're about to discover why they all failed. And if you're ready to stop fighting and start working with your mind's natural wisdom, subscribe now. This channel teaches authentic Eastern philosophy that actually works. Now, let's begin with a young man who couldn't understand why he was so different from the masters. Chapter 1. The Heavy Mind Mountain Temple, Winter, 1642. Kenji was 22 years old and completely drained. Every morning he woke up feeling cluttered, not just tired, cluttered, like his thoughts were made of thick smoke instead of light. He worked at the calligraphy desks alongside the other monks, but while they moved with precision, their brushes gliding with ease as they worked, Kenji struggled. His hands shook, his mind wandered, his concentration was broken by the slightest sound. By midday, he was frustrated and desperate for a distraction, while men twice his age continued their work without a single break in focus. And the guilt that had slowly accumulated over the past 3 years. His scrolls were messy, his deadlines were missed. His reputation was becoming that of a dreamer who couldn't finish a task. The worst part? He didn't understand why. He studied the same texts as everyone else. He sat in the same hall, he ate the same food. So why was he the only one who felt like a failure? One afternoon, after ruining a precious scroll because he simply couldn't focus, Kenji sat by the temple pond, trying to steady his mind. That's when the master approached. The master was 85 years old. Everyone knew this because he celebrated every season with a new poem. 85 winters I've watched the snow, he'd say with a smile. And I'll watch 20 more if my spirit remains clear. His spirit seemed to agree. Despite his age, the master moved with a presence that Kenji envied. His posture was perfect, his gaze was steady, his mind was obviously quiet. "Kenji-kun," the master said, sitting beside him, "why do you sit here looking like a man whose house is on fire?" "I'm distracted, master. Always distracted. I don't know what's wrong with me." "Nothing is wrong with you. You simply haven't learned how to direct your energy yet." Kenji looked at him confused. "I've been trying for years. I force myself to sit still. But forcing and directing are different things. Forcing means you are at war with yourself. Directing means understanding how to guide your awareness in harmony with the task. I try to work as hard as the others. Do you? The master's eyes sparkled with knowing. Tell me exactly how you approach your morning work. Chapter 2. The first lesson. Mushin Kenji thought back to the morning. I sit at my desk. I try to think of the words. I worry about the ink. I think about what I will eat later. I try to push those thoughts away so I can focus. And how do you feel after this? Exhausted. My head feels tight, and then I want to walk away and do nothing. The master nodded slowly. Tell me now, when you try to focus, how many things is your mind holding at once? I don't know. Everything? The work, the worries, the noise? No, think about this carefully. Have you ever tried to hold a handful of sand? The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. Kenji paused. Actually, yes. That happened every time he sat down. He would squeeze his mind shut, try to force focus, and 10 minutes later, he'd be thinking about a bird outside. That happens to me, he admitted. Of course it does. It happens to everyone who tries to grab focus. Do you know why? Kenji shook his head. Your mind is like a mirror. If you try to paint on the mirror, you can no longer see what is in front of you. You're trying to paint focus onto your mind. In the martial arts of the North, the warriors have a secret. Mushin. It means mind of no mind. They don't try to think about the sword. They don't try to think about the enemy. They simply clear the mirror so they can react to what is real. But wouldn't I just be empty? That's what everyone thinks. But here's the secret. If you clear the mirror and wait, you discover you're actually perfectly capable of the task. You do exactly what is needed without the friction of thought. Kenji looked skeptical. How do you reach this state? That's the important part. You cannot reach it if you are rushing while worried. You must slow down, pay attention to the brush, notice how the ink smells. Stop before you reach that squeezing sensation in your head. But that would mean working slower. No, it means working without resistance. Every day you waste hours fighting your own distractions. Over months and years, that friction burns out your spirit. That's where your exhaustion comes from, not from the work, but from the war you wage against the work. For the first time in years, something clicked in Kenji's mind. He wasn't lacking effort. He was using too much of the wrong kind of effort. Chapter 3. Learning to observe. That evening, Kenji tried the master's teaching. He sat at his desk as usual, but instead of gripping the brush and telling himself, focus, 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 he slowed down. He paid attention. He noticed the texture of the paper. Halfway through his first page, something strange happened. His mind sent a gentle signal. There is a bird singing outside. Usually, he would get angry at the bird and then get angry at himself for noticing. This time, he just noticed the thought. This is a thought, he thought. He didn't squeeze. He put down the brush, sat with the sensation of being distracted, and waited. His mind immediately protested. You're wasting time. There's more work. Hurry up. But Kenji waited, just like the master said, and something amazing happened. The urge to be distracted transformed into a quiet curiosity. His mind felt comfortable, light, not forced, not wandering, just ready. He couldn't remember the last time work had felt this way. The next morning, he woke up feeling different. Not smarter. He hadn't gained knowledge overnight, but less cluttered. His brain wasn't heavy with the residue of yesterday's frustration. He actually felt eager to sit at the desk. When had he last felt truly eager to work? He found the master tending the temple gates. Master, I tried Mushin last night. It worked. I felt ready with less effort, but my mind kept shouting at me to hurry. Of course it did. Your mind has been trained for 22 years to be in a state of panic. It will take time to retrain it, but your spirit already knows the truth. You just have to learn to listen. Is that the only secret? Just clear the mind. The master laughed. If it were that simple, everyone would be a sage. No, there are many more principles, and they all work together. Come walk with me to the village. I'll teach you the second lesson. Chapter 4. The Walking Lesson. As they walked, Kenji noticed something. The master was 85 years old and walking faster than him, not by much, but enough to be noticeable. "Master, how do you keep your pace so steady?" "I walk to the market and back, to the stream and back, to visit the sick, maybe 5 or 6 miles. I don't count." 6 miles at your age? At my age, the master smiled. My body doesn't know how to exist any other way. They passed a younger merchant being carried in a palanquin. "See that?" the master pointed. "He saves his legs. Very convenient. But his mind grows soft from lack of engagement with the earth. Convenience is the enemy of clarity. But walking isn't mental work. Exactly. That's the secret. In the distant lands, I hear they have rooms where people go to sit and stare at walls while moving their legs on wheels. They call it training, and they do it for 1 hour, then remain stagnant the rest of the day. Kenji had never heard of such a strange practice. Our minds were made to move through space, not to be trapped in boxes all day, then do violent thinking for 10 hours. To walk gently is to let the thoughts settle like mud in a glass of water. The master gestured to the world around them. Everyone was moving, walking to the well, walking to the forge. Children playing, which was just walking with joy. You think about rest as something separate from life, something you do when you are broken, but walking is active rest. How many steps do you think you take toward clarity each day? I don't know. Your mind doesn't count steps. It just settles because there is rhythm in the movement. For the next week, Kenji started paying attention to his movement. He realized he'd been finding ways to move less. Sitting whenever possible. Avoiding the stairs, saving his energy, but saving energy for what? To be more stressed? He started taking the long way, standing while reading, moving with the rhythm of the day, nothing dramatic, just moving more like the world had been doing all along. Chapter 5. The Structure of Tasks. 2 weeks later, the master invited Kenji to his study. When Kenji arrived, he was surprised by how the master's work was laid out. Instead of one giant pile of scrolls, there were several small stations. One small table had ink, one small shelf had the reference text, one small mat was for writing. "This is the way of the divided room," the master explained. "This is how a proper day should be arranged." "But it's so much movement. Wouldn't it be easier to have everything in one pile?" "Easier, yes. Better, no. Watch what happens when you work this way." They began. Kenji started at the first station, a simple task of preparing the ink, the smell, the color, the texture. Then he moved to the next station to read, then to the next to write. Each small station offered a completely different physical and mental flavor. His mind felt entertained, satisfied, like he was experiencing a journey, even though each task was actually quite small. By the time he'd worked through all the stations, he felt completely productive. Yet he'd done less straining than he normally would at his one messy desk. "Do you see?" the master asked. "Your mind feels like it has accomplished many different things. It feels abundant, but the total work is actually focused. And the transition? Ah, yes. The walk between stations clears the mirror before the next task. This helps you stay fresh. Plus, variety is water for the soul. Very refreshing." Kenji understood. It wasn't magic. It was psychology. Small tasks arranged physically made him feel like he was winning, even as he worked with moderation. You could arrange your own life this way, Kenji-kun. You don't need a temple. Just serve your day as several small sessions instead of one giant block. Include a break. Let your eyes see progress, even as you work with calm. Chapter 6. The Wisdom of Environment. The next lesson came when Kenji visited the master's garden. The old man was pulling weeds, but he was doing it with the same focus he used for calligraphy. "Kenji-kun, how many distractions do you allow in your room each day?" "I don't know. The window is open. People talk. I have my old scrolls nearby." In the old wisdom, they say a person should have at least 5 voids in their workspace, spaces where nothing exists. He pointed to a bare patch of sand. "Every single day, you must look at nothing." That sounds like a waste of time, only if nothing is boring. But a void prepared with care, it becomes the place where new ideas are born. Over the next hour, the master taught Kenji how to prune his environment. He removed the extra brushes. He cleared the old ink stains. He turned his desk away from the busy path. In the West, I hear they fill their rooms with many colorful objects and loud clocks, then wonder why they cannot think. This is noise. No wonder they are tired. Kenji looked at his own workspace later. It was crowded, messy, loud. The secret is treating your space with the same respect you give your mind. It is not a storage box. It is a vessel for your spirit. But why so much emptiness? Think about it, Kenji. Emptiness allows you to see the one thing that matters. If your desk is 80% empty, there is only room for the task at hand. You feel satisfied. Your mind is calm. You do the work, but you don't feel the weight of 1,000 other things calling for your attention. It was brilliant. Not restriction, just displacement. Fill the space with nothing, and there's naturally less room for distraction. Chapter 7. The Social Pressure. One evening, Kenji was working late. His friends came by and asked him to join them for a celebration. He wanted to go, but he also felt the need to finish a scroll to prove he was productive. He stayed. He forced himself to write, but his mind was at the party. He produced poor work and felt miserable. The next day, he told the master, "I stayed to work, but I finished nothing." The master nodded. There is a social aspect to focus that many ignore. Your peers notice if you are busy, and they praise you for it. Sometimes this feels good, but it is a trap. But shouldn't I work more? Working past the point of quality is a waste. The scroll doesn't help anyone if the ink is smeared with frustration. There it was. The social pressure to look busy. In our temple, we respect the work by stopping when the spirit is tired. We do not perform busyness for others. The boy who sits at the desk for 10 hours but only thinks for one is a thief of his own time. Later, the master pulled him aside. The people you spend time with influence your rhythm. If you are surrounded by monks who rush and complain, you will rush and complain. If you are surrounded by those who move with Mushin, you will naturally find it too. Kenji thought about this. In one way, it was pressure. In another, it was support. Everyone around him valuing peace made it easier for him to be peaceful too. The people you eat with influence how you digest your life. Chapter 8. The Timing of the Spirit. Kenji-kun, what time do you do your most difficult thinking? Usually late at night, when everything is quiet. The master shook his head. This is another problem. Your spirit is preparing for rest, but you are demanding fire. When should I work? While the sun is rising. At least 3 hours before the midday meal, preferably 4. But I'm not a morning person. Only because your body has learned to expect noise at night. Retrain it. The master explained, when you work late and then sleep soon after, your mind doesn't have time to settle. Much of that stress gets stored in your dreams. But when you work early and stay active for several hours, your mind processes the effort and clears the mirror. There is an old saying, treat the morning like a master, the afternoon like a friend, and the evening like a servant. Your hardest work should be when the world is fresh. For the next month, Kenji shifted his rhythm, an hour earlier at first, then 2. Eventually, he was doing his calligraphy while the birds were first waking. The first few days he felt sluggish. but his body adjusted. Within 2 weeks, he didn't feel the night fog anymore. And something unexpected happened. He slept better. His mind wasn't grinding on a problem while he tried to rest. He woke feeling lighter, more energized. Chapter 9. The Power of Small Tools. One day, the master showed Kenji his brushes. They were small, much smaller than the heavy, thick brushes Kenji liked. Have you ever noticed that people will use as much space as they are given? If the brush is giant, they make giant, messy strokes. If the brush is small, they move with precision and care. Using small tools tricks your mind into focus with less strain. Your eyes see a delicate task, so your mind brings a delicate attention. Kenji tried this. Instead of a giant scroll, he used a small sheet. Instead of a long deadline, he gave himself 20 minutes. It felt complete. His mind registered a full accomplishment, but the actual effort was 30% less than he normally spent. After finishing, he felt satisfied. Not because he was exhausted, but because his mind had seen completion. Nothing missing. This is why our masters look like they are doing little, Kenji. We use small windows of time and small physical spaces. Each task looks complete in its container, but the total output is steady. And if I need more, then you start another small container. But you'll find that after finishing the first small serving of work and waiting a few minutes, you feel satisfied and ready, not drained. The psychology was fascinating. It wasn't about doing less. It was about working with how the human brain actually perceives progress. Chapter 10. The Final Wisdom. 3 months had passed. Kenji had found his flow. Not dramatically, not through suffering, but steadily, naturally. His scrolls were beautiful. His energy had returned. He could work the full day without burnout. More importantly, he felt different, lighter, not just physically, but mentally. He wasn't fighting his mind anymore. He wasn't forcing himself to be productive through willpower. He was simply living in harmony with these principles. One evening, the master called him over. "Kenji-kun, do you remember when you asked if there was one single secret to focus?" "Yes, and you said there were 10 principles." Kenji nodded. "Here is the truth. The principles are not separate. They all work together. Mushin only works if you have a clear environment. Small tasks only work if you have the right timing. Walking works better if you respect your social boundaries. They are connected, like a rope made of many strands. One strand breaks easily. 10 strands twisted together become unbreakable." The master continued, "But there's something deeper. None of these require fighting against yourself. They all work with your spirit's natural wisdom." The samurai understood this. True power comes not from force, but from alignment. When you move with the flow, effort becomes effortless. The same with the mind. When you fight distraction with strict rules, you eventually lose because the mind loves freedom. But when you work in ways that naturally satisfy the mind, there is no fight. Kenji finally understood. For years, he'd been trying to force himself to be a machine through willpower and restriction, and he'd failed because you can't win a war against yourself. But these principles, they weren't warfare. They were wisdom, not fighting, just living correctly. Remember Kaizen, Kenji-kun. Continuous improvement through tiny steps. You didn't change everything overnight. You changed one thing, then another. Small changes sustained over time create large transformations. Thank you, Master. You've given me my mind back. No, Kenji-kun. I've only reminded you how to use the mind you already had. This wisdom was always available to you. You just needed to notice it. The teaching continues. Years later, Kenji became the master of the temple. And when young people came to him struggling with their focus, exhausted and discouraged, he taught them the same 10 principles. Not as strict rules, not as a productivity system, but as a way of being. Find Mushin and notice how your work actually feels. Arrange your day with many small stations instead of one giant desk. Walk throughout the day as a natural part of life. Learn to prepare your environment so you actually want to be there. Use small containers of time that trick your mind into satisfaction. Do your hardest work when the world is fresh. Let the people around you support your peace. Include moments of void that help clarity. Respect the work by not forcing it. Practice Kaizen. These weren't hacks. They were life principles, ancient wisdom that had kept masters sharp for 1,000 years. And they still work today. If this video revealed wisdom you've been searching for, do this. Comment, "I choose harmony over fighting." Subscribe for authentic philosophy that works with your brain, not against it. And remember Kenji's lesson. Your mind isn't your enemy. It's been waiting for you to stop fighting and start listening. The 10 principles are ready whenever you are.